Okay, good evening. I'd like to call to order the Tuesday, September 10th meeting of the Onalaska Common Council. It is 7 p.m. We'll begin with the roll call. I'll ask our city clerk, Joanne Marcon, to call the roll.
Mayor Kim Smith,
Here.
Dan Stevens,
I am present.
Stephen Knott,
Present.
Mike Milkey,
Here.
Larry Jurassic,
Present.
Diane Wolf here, and Sean McAllister excused.
Thank you. Item number 2 is the Pledge of Allegiance. Please rise. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you for that. Item 3 is the rules of the City of Onalaska Common Council and its subcommittees. This is a harassment-free forum. Meetings shall be conducted in a courteous manner. Citizens, council, and committee members shall be allowed to state their positions in an atmosphere free of slander, obscene remarks, or threats of violence. Sufficient warnings may be given by the sergeant at arms or the chair at any time during the remarks. And in the event that any individual shall violate the rules of decorum as set forth, such person may then be cut off from comment or debate. Item 4 is our time for public input. If you'd like to address the Common Council this evening, now is the time to do so. Please begin by stating your name and your address and limiting your comments to 3 minutes. Is there anyone who would like to address the Common Council this evening? And Ron, I have you on the agenda under the mayor's report, so I'll call you up then at that time. Megan, you could, yeah.
Hello, everybody. I think I got to shake your hands all already, but I'm Megan Grindy. I'm hoping to be appointed to the Parks and Rec Board. I'm really excited about the opportunity. I've lived in Alaska for a year with my husband and my 3-year-old daughter, Mary. We love the parks. We love being outside and on Alaska, and I want to be part of it. Just a bit of background about myself. I grew up in Melrose on a farm, went to school in the Twin Cities, and came back to the Coulee region, La Crosse area around 2010. So I've been here working for LHI and Organic Valley in IT. Also have some experience in local government. I was the municipal clerk actually in the township where my family's farm is up in Jackson County. So I really love local government. Thank you for what you do, and I'm excited. So nice to meet you all.
Thank you, Megan. Would anyone else like to address the Common Council this evening? Second call for public input. Third and final call for anyone wishing to address the Common Council this evening. Public input is now closed, and we will move on to item 5, the membership presentation by the La Crosse Area Chamber of Commerce. Welcome.
Thank you for having me today. I'm Neil Zigerlicki, CEO of the La Crosse Area Chamber of Commerce, although I will acknowledge that I'm stepping away and my last day at the chamber is this Friday, but we have a wonderful staff. So I come here to ask and see if the city of Onalaska would consider an opportunity to become a La Crosse Area Chamber of Commerce member. For consideration, the city of La Crosse, the county of La Crosse, and the village of Holmen, among a couple of other municipalities, are also chamber members as well. And some of you might think about what is the chamber and what is it doing currently today? So I'll focus on those areas. Our core areas of focus at the Chamber of Commerce are in 5 areas. First, we focus on small business. We have small business socials, we have educational roundtables and other programming that is relevant to small business owners, those people who are running our businesses that have usually 10 to 25 employees or less. We also, our second focus of area is government relations. We have a full-time person on our staff now that works with our municipalities across our region to help enhance what's going on in each municipality. We've heard from our business members, and they continuously say, we're interested in wanting to know what's happening at the municipality level. Sometimes the communication just is all over the place. And sometimes our businesses don't understand how the procedure works within your council, right? And so what our government relations person is trying to do is to handle not only big issues, but work with getting out communications to our business members so that they have it. We have a captive audience, so we want to work on that as well. Our third area of focus is our workforce. We have run a talent attraction campaign that brings people to the area, that promotes just the La Crosse region and our MSA in general, Onalaska being a part of that. We also run a program that's called the First Friend Program, which has brought over 600 different people to the area where businesses pay us a nominal fee so that we can give community tours. I will tell you, every single community tour brings them through Onalaska to show what you have to offer. And oftentimes these people are purchasing and finding Onalaska as a place to live. So we see a direct correlation to the work on enhancing the people that are living and choosing Onalaska as a place to live. Also within the workforce realm, we hold leadership training courses, which oftentimes our mayors have attended and been a part of. And we also have a training course for servant leadership with Viterbo University as well that many of our business professionals attend. Our fourth area of focus has been young professionals, where we have 300 young professionals that are a part of a group that gets together for socials and for educational trainings and roundtables. And lastly, our fifth kind of focus area is just building community. We want to be a collaborator, not an adversary, especially when it comes to municipalities. So one of the things that we've been doing beyond hiring a government relations person is continuing to start to show up to planning meetings at municipalities. I had the opportunity to be a part of the Live Onalaska planning sessions, and that was absolutely fantastic to be a part of as well. So Onalaska, its businesses and organizations has 120 businesses out of our 600 members in the La Crosse region. So your support as a municipality of the Chamber of Commerce is also a support for those businesses and the citizens. Your support also would demonstrate a direct investment into the city of Onalaska employees. As the employees and as employees of the city of Onalaska and as members of the Chamber of Commerce, they will have access to these wonderful educational conferences, the opportunities within those. They would also have the opportunity to represent the city of Onalaska with other regional leaders at our business after hours, where they can network, gain more resources as well. And also, it's just being a supporter of our region and the economic progress and development of our region. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you for the consideration on becoming a La Crosse Area Chamber of Commerce member. I will leave it open since I believe we have a few minutes for any questions that you might have.
Thank you so much for coming tonight, Neil. Do the counselors have any questions? Dan Stevens?
Thank you, Mayor. I know that at the last big chamber annual event that they had, Onalaska had I think we had a table and a pretty good showing. I guess I thought we were already members. Is that not the case?
Not the case.
That is not the case. We have a good working relationship and we've partnered on many things, including the talent attraction campaign, which was a 3-year pledge that we made to the chamber, but we are not members.
So we're just crashing their events then.
That's right. Yes, I've been known to show up
With-
at the after
with-
5 events.
With acceptance. Of course.
Alder Wolf?
Thank you, Your Honor. So I know part of the reason why Neil is here is this evening, and thank you so much for making the time for us, especially in light of the fact that you're done this Friday in 3 days. Earlier, the city administrator, Niemeyer, and Mayor Kim and myself, we met, maybe, I don't know, in the last couple months, just to talk about the possibility and with budget coming up, and it was brought up, you offered to come and we thought it would be an appropriate time. So thank you very much for coming. And I look forward to part of the budget process and for that future discussion. I'm sorry that you won't be part of that, but thank you for taking the time and good luck to you in your future.
Thank you so much. And I can promise you, we have a wonderful, wonderful staff at the chamber that will continue to take care of the city of Onalaska.
Great, thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah, and thank you so much, Neil, for your service in your position. I think you've really taken the chamber up, to a higher level, and we really have seen that in the community, and we appreciate that. So thank you.
Thank you so much.
Okay, item 6, report from the mayor. Item A is recognition of Patrick McGuane's service on the Park Recreation and Library Board. I've accepted his resignation from the Park and Rec Board due to a conflict with his current job. Item B is appointment of Megan Grindy to the Park Recreation and Library Board. She has introduced herself, I think, to most of you. So I'd like to recommend that appointment as we move forward.
I move to accept the appointment of Megan Grindy to the Parks, Recreation, and Library Board this evening.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor by Diane Wolf. It's been seconded by Stephen Knott. Is there any further discussion? Not seeing or hearing any. All in favor, please say aye.
Your Honor, can we do roll call? Our ordinances require appointments done by roll call.
Oh, really? Okay, I'm very sorry for that. Okay, so we have a motion on the floor to approve Megan. It was made by Diane, seconded by Stephen Knott, and we will have the voting by roll call. Thank you, Joanne.
Dan Stevens,
Aye.
Stephen Knott,
Aye.
Mike Milky,
Aye.
Diane Wolf,
Aye.
Larry Jurassic.
Aye.
And that voting was unanimous. Congratulations, Megan, and we'll be reaching out to let you know what the next steps are. Okay, item C is recognition of World War II veteran Jack Holfield. I would like to welcome Ron Graw. If you want to start coming up, Ron. And Rick, can you make sure the microphone is on? He wants to just say a few words. I wanted to welcome Ron here tonight. He and his wife Sharon, who is the niece of Jack Holfield, worked for 12 years to bring his remains back home from overseas where he was. And I'll just turn it over to Ron to say a few words. Thank you for coming tonight. We do appreciate that.
Thank you. My name is Ron Graw and my wife is Sharon. She is Sergeant Jack Holfeld's niece, and she did work tirelessly for years in trying to bring him back. And when we got the call from Fort Knox, Kentucky, we were just dumbfounded. And I want to thank the city of Alaska and all the organizations that honored Jack Holfeld. It's pronounced Holfeld. You make us very proud to be part of this city. We've been here 10 years now, and Onalaska has been very good to us. The police and the fire departments did an amazing job with all the traffic en route from church to the cemetery. I received lots of positive comments from people who thank fire and the police departments for that. Traffic was crazy. And I think all the professional military personnel, active and retired, you are all so impressive. So many positive comments from so many. And I want to thank the Legion Riders for escorting Jack from the Twin Cities, because he was flown from Honolulu to the Twin Cities. And the Legion Riders went up there. They had hundreds of miles on their bicycles. And they dropped him off at the Onalaska Schumacher Kish funeral home. And thank you to the Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts. There were at least 80 of the Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts waving flags and forming the procession. And many said to me, it just brought tears to their eyes. See these little kids waving their flags and waving, just amazing. And thanks to St. Pat's Church for the beautiful funeral mass and incredible singing, and the Knights of Columbus and all their regalia enhancing their celebration. And a special thanks to Steve Knott for the incredible flyover that he had a part in at the cemetery. And all your behind the scenes help. Steve, thank you. And to also thank you, Schumacher Kish, for all their professional help and professionalism. You all created such an outpouring of love that Sergeant Jack, I was hoping I wouldn't get emotional, but it's just overwhelming. He would have been proud and honored and humbled by the respect and professionalism and caring displayed by all who had a part in bringing him home and laying him to rest. And today we went down to the Veterans Office and actually has his marker that will be installed shortly. And also, I want to thank Elevate Media, which is an Alaska business here. I don't know how many people you know about them, but they have generously agreed. I talked to them a month and a half ago, and they said they would video all the actions of the day and put it on video and eventually YouTube for everyone in the world to see. And lastly, Channel 19, Dustin Lukey is an absolute professional in his crew, and they did a fantastic job. And I want to thank everyone very much. Thank you all.
And thank you, sir. It was definitely our honor.
Thank you.
Okay, next we'll consider recommendations for approval and or possible action from the following committees, commissions, boards, or officials. All items listed under the consent agenda are considered routine and will be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a council member requests removal, in which event the item will be removed from the consent agenda and considered in the order of business in the non-consent agenda. Are there any items the counselors would like removed from the consent agenda? Not seeing any, I'll enter.
Your Honor, I move that we approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor by Dan Stevens. It's been seconded by Stephen Knott to approve the consent agenda. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. The consent agenda is approved unanimously. Did I mess up? Oh, I just assumed I'd. Okay. let's see. Okay, we'll go on to the non-consent agenda. Item 8 is a recap of items pulled from the consent agenda. There were none. Item 9 is the Finance Committee. I think, Mike, you're the vice chair, right?
Thank you,
Turn
Mayor.
it over to Mike Milky for the Finance Committee items.
I'm actually the vice chair,
Oh.
but we're gonna let Mike do it in our young alder talent
Oh, it's talent development
experience,
night.
yeah, talent
Okay.
development program.
I
All
think
right.
He can handle it.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Dan. First is the vouchers. The following is a list of monies expended since the last common council meeting dated August 13th, 2024, in the total of $6,767,475.83. I'll make a motion to approve the vouchers.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor by Mike Milky. It's been seconded by Dan Stevens to approve the vouchers as described. Is there any discussion?
I think we want to hand this over to Sabrina quick.
Okay, Sabrina.
Yes, so you can maybe be curious that it is a lot more than usual. The reason for that is our bond payments are due as of October 1st. And that is the large bank draft is for our bond payments.
Thank you for that.
Mhm.
Any other discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you for that.
All right, next is item 9, letter B, resolution 27-2024 to transfer funds in the special revenue fund, special projects. I'd like to make a motion to approve.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor by Mike Milky. It's been seconded by Dan Stevens. Is there any discussion?
Amanda, did you want to say anything on this?
Yeah, I can just add that this is the resolution in follow-up to what was on the FMP agenda, on the consent agenda, which is the creation of that special project fund for the Resident Emergency Assistant Fund that would provide a city-sponsored grant program for individuals who had lost occupancy of their house. And so this resolution does what Sabrina needs it to do on the money side in order to actually create the applicable accounts and move the money.
Thank you. Is there any other discussion? Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you.
All right, now we're going on to 9C. That's going to be the school resource officer agreement with the Onalaska School District for the 2024-2025 school year. I'd like to make a motion to approve this as well.
I'll second.
Okay, motion on the floor by Mike Milky. It's been seconded by Dan Stevens. Is there any discussion on this item? Alder Wolf?
Thank you, Your Honor. This item was not at F&P, came through council, and I guess I would like someone to address the changes. There was not a memo like in some past years we've had, and I'm very disappointed for the third year in a row, there was not a red line copy. So I'm going to be making my plea one more time next year that we receive a red line copy, because to compare 7 pages of a single spaced contract is not fun. So if someone could give updates, I would really appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, Chief, you want to just give us a update on what has changed for this year's contract?
Sure. Good evening.
Welcome.
The changes overall were very minor. We had some minor language in, bear with me. Section 5, overtime. And the school wanted to add a middle school event where an officer would be in attendance. And so we essentially took away one of the post football season event and replaced it with a middle school event. We felt that that was a fair trade, I guess you would say. So that is language that was slightly changed there. There was also a little bit in section 8 under training where we added a sentence about additional SRO training desired by the district will be at the cost of the district. And then lastly, I believe it was the financials with updated financials and an increase from the 53% reimbursement that we had last year to raising it to 60%, which we're trying on our way over a period of time to get it up to the 75% reimbursement of the officer's wages. So I believe those were the 3 changes. Do you?
No, the only thing I would add is if you look at Appendix 1, that is sort of our best guess at the time of, putting this together. Obviously, these numbers are not set in stone with respect to like health and dental. And so Sabrina just puts together, based on what we know at the time we're doing it, and the district understands that.
Okay, are there any other questions? Alder Wolf?
Thank you, Your Honor. So for either one, so a few questions about the Appendix I, about the program costs. Then I'm sorry, Amanda, it was kind of hard to hear that your spot is very hard to hear over there. So if these change a little bit, will those costs be passed on?
Yes, they will pay the accurate cost. It's just we put this together to give them the best estimate we can at the time of negotiations.
Okay.
Health insurance is not often set by then, and Sabrina can elaborate further.
Yeah. So what we'll do is for fall 2024, that will be the actual. So the $24,011.82 is what we will bill them once this contract is approved. When it comes to the spring of 2025, we will wait until the spring to bill them when we do have our health insurance rates intact, as well as any changes to WRS and so forth.
Okay, thank you.
And you can see that she does have the little asterisks that those 3 are the estimated costs:
Oh, perfect.
workers' comp, retirement, and health and dental.
Yeah, thank you. And then so on the left-hand column where it says fall 2024 for 4 months and the other spring 2025 for 5 months, under the fall 24, for total number of hours, it's 714. Last year was 731.
They started school earlier last year.
They what?
They started school earlier last year because, so we do actually calculate based on the calendar year of each individual school year.
Okay. And when we did a bump mid-year for staff, did fire and police also receive that? Or was
In their
that,
contract, there was a raise in July, so yes, that was.
that was already built into their contract?
Yep.
If for any reason council were to take any action before that contract is up, say for example, for 2025, will we have to,
That would not, they would not pay that.
so it would be on our end?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have. Thank you, Your Honor.
All right. Does anyone else have any other questions? Larry Jurassic?
Yeah, Chief, how many officers do you have that be fully qualified for this position?
Well, in theory, most of my staff would be qualified. Now, once, if you're chosen for the position, we send them to additional SRO training. So I mean, the basis of is you need to be a sworn law enforcement officer with a minimum, I believe, 3 years on the job. So that's where I say most of my officers would qualify, but there is additional training provided after the person's selected.
They have more than one candidate, that's all I'm trying to say.
We-
We have more than one candidate,
No, it's a special assignment. I think that's what he
Yeah.
means.
that's what I'm saying.
It's a 5-year position.
Oh, okay.
So we're not getting a new one. We just are having a new contract with the district. We do a yearly contract.
All right, thank you.
Stephen Knott?
Yeah, so I'll be supporting this. The school resource officer provides, I'm absolutely convinced, a immeasurable increase in security for our schools because they have conversation with the professional leadership of each school on their own security throughout the year, how to react to certain circumstances, what have you. But also, I think they have an immeasurable impact on our youth and their understanding and respect for law enforcement and civil authority as well. There's no way to subjectively measure any impact, I guess. But in my own personal opinion, I think that the benefits far exceed any cost behind this.
Thank you, Stephen. Anyone else?
I have one follow-up.
Okay, Alder Wolf?
Thank you. So, Amanda, I heard you say maybe going towards, working towards 75-25.
Yes, that is correct.
That's the eventual goal.
That is the eventual goal. We did also have some discussions this year about perhaps moving this to be a longer term contract, sort of like we did with the Humane Society, since we operate on different calendar years, which makes this really tricky. Which is why it often ends up not going through F&P and being sort of a last minute addition. So we did have some discussions. I don't know that it will happen for next year, but there definitely, I think, was consensus that it might be nice to try to get this to become a 3-year contract. And, just we'll know that it'll follow a union contract cycle. And so there was some talk maybe when the next contract is implemented, looking at a longer contract.
I like that idea. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Okay, thank you for that. All right, the motion on the floor is to approve the SRO agreement with the school district for the upcoming 2024-25 school year. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. And we'll move on to item 10, personnel.
Thank you, Mayor. Item 10A was for the discussion on an internal equity and pay plan review of non-represented positions. Make a motion to approve for discussion.
The motion was just to approve the discussion.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Well, we don't,
And I guess I would like to have discussion to it, but that's my motion right now. Do I not need a motion on that?
I don't know that we need a discussion. We don't need a motion to discuss it because we don't know
We don't
what
need a
the,
motion to discuss it. We need a motion to approve it.
yeah, but we don't,
I mean, it is always good to have a motion on the floor for discussion purposes, so we know what we're discussing.
I'll second the motion to approve for the sake of discussion.
okay, so the motion on the floor is to approve for discussion, the topic at hand. Alder Stevens?
Thank you, Your Honor. When this came before FMP last week, I was marginally against the idea, having gone through a wage study program about 5 years ago. On the other hand, it was like, it's only 16,000, and we always want to do right by our city employees. But as I've had time to sit and stew on this, I'm now more firmly against this, having given it more thought. In the 5 years since we did the last wage study where we recreated the wheel, the biggest problem that we've had, while compression in wages is a problem, and I fully acknowledge that that is an issue, but our biggest problem has been inflation. We know that our COLAs have not kept up with inflation. I see we're just roughly about 7% under where we ought to be if we kept up with the correction we did 5 years ago at the last wage study. But I really feel that we're putting the cart before the horse here. If we engage in a wage study, and I've made my thoughts on what the effect on morale would be and how this essentially we'd be hiring outside consultants that potentially would maybe pick some winners and some losers. I just don't see the long-term benefit is minuscule, but the long-term open wounds that City Hall will be carrying around is going to be immense. I think that we really need to determine how much money we have to play with when discussing wages before we decide what that new bar is going to be. And I asked a question, and I don't know that I really got an answer last time, is what happens if we are, say, $500,000 under what the consultants decide that we want to do? We're not gonna, we know that we have finite resources. We can't just, because of statutory limits, raise taxes to cover that. I mean, it'd be nice if we had this pot of never ending money and we could solve compression and we could solve inflation and make everybody happy and fill all the positions that we want to fill. That is just not the reality that we have. So what do we do if there's a shortfall? Do some people get their wages up where they're supposed to be and others don't? Does everybody maybe go up a little bit, but not as much? And they know that now, hey, I know specifically I'm underpaid in this position. That rubs people the wrong way. Or do we eliminate some positions so we can bring the remaining people up to par? None of those are good options. And I think that we have a fiduciary responsibility not only to our taxpaying constituents, but to the staff that's working here. I will not support anything that leads us to a non-zero chance that we may have to start reevaluating positions to meet a budgetary goal. On top of that, we have our union contracts coming up next year. And when we've done this in the past, we negotiate and we do our COLAs and everything with staff. And the public safety contracts come up at a different time. And we've done that where they've been left holding the bag and they don't get as much as they're supposed to. We've had pleas from the chiefs saying that, hey, attrition is a problem. We think our officers are about $4 an hour under par with what the surrounding communities are. And as a result, they're leaving. Why would you not go to a different community if you're going to do the same work and they're going to, because they have that need too, they're going to match the tenure and the benefits. It's almost like we're encouraging talent to leave and we're making it harder for new talent to come into us. So we've got some problems to fix, and spending $16,000 on consultants is the wrong way to go. If anything, let's just take that money and put it to COLA, add it to what we're going to do. A rising tide lifts all boats. But if we send this out to Baker Tilly or whoever's doing the review, that money is basically, we're just flushing it down the toilet. Let's say no to the consultants. Let's marshal our resources, find out what we have to work with, and then we can try to treat our staff as fairly as we possibly and feasibly can do so. We need to protect our staff and our positions. Like I said, I will not support anything that I think will lead us down the road to where we may have to have some very unpleasant and unnecessary, I think we're setting ourselves up for failure by engaging in a wage study. I learned my lesson last time. We got burned. I said never again, and I mean it. So please do not support the wage study.
Okay, thank you for that, Dan. I just, for clarity of the record, I want to state what I think the motion is and then have confirmation that everyone agrees. And this is just coming right from the memo. So what we have here, it says an internal equity and pay plan analysis for the evaluation of non-represented positions for an estimated cost of $16,000. The account number is listed. And this would include recalibrate job evaluations and develop a new pay plan or adjust the existing with updated grade assignments. I just want to verify with you, Mike, that that's the motion you intended, and with you, Stephen, that that is the one you, okay, I should have read it in, but we were kind of haphazard there. All right, let's start with Stephen Knott.
Yeah, basically, I'm agreeing with pretty much everything I just heard from Dan. I want to reemphasize again that COLA is a tool that we already look at on an annual basis in order to continue to try to keep as competitive as we possibly can with our wages. We're also looking at, my understanding anyway, some fairly significant budget challenges for the next several years. And that I don't want to create any conditions that in 1 to 2 years, we could be unintentionally creating that a few will have to pay a tremendous price for the many, meaning the possibility of layoffs, because there is a finite amount of financial resources. So yeah, I don't think I can support this either.
Thank you. Alder Wolf.
Thank you, Your Honor. I'll lead with a positive comment, and it should be taken as such. Contrary to Alder Stevens' comment at F&P last week, we agree on far more than what we disagree on. And I have also had an epiphany since last Wednesday's F&P. And I've had numerous conversations since. My concern is that we're putting the cart before the horse. I think this would be my fourth pay study. And the last one was, if you read the minutes, if you were here, last week, I talked about how we were promised, things were set in place. We can go forward. We would never have to do that again because we would be doing things internally. That didn't happen. Since this proposal that's on the floor right now for approval won't go into effect until the year 2026 for F&P last week, I don't think that there's a rush to go ahead and just push this through just as fast as we can. I think we have time. If anything, I was looking to make, and as someone who intensely dislikes referrals, I hate referring to another month, but this is one time that I think we should. I don't think we should kill it, but I think maybe we need to turn it back, refer it back to administration for further discussion, which would be city administrator, finance, HR, to have more internal discussions. Some of the concerns that were shared with me of late was we go ahead and approve this, go forward, we spend the $16,000. A lot of flack that I received back in, was it 2021 when we did the last one, was we should have taken that $35,000 and put it towards wages instead, and to bring people up instead of the actual study itself. So I heard that a lot, but I think we were so far off last time that, I don't regret doing that because we had to do something. It was imperative that we do something. My concern is we go ahead, prove this, we look forward towards 2026. Well, that's so far off. Well, so I think in this, I'm assuming in our city administrator's budget, which we'll see a month from now, that there's going to be, I'm assuming that there's going to be additional positions. I don't know how many, how few, but then, so if they are approved, so then come 2026, now these adjustments that we would be approving tonight eventually go into effect. Like Alder Stevens and Alder not just said, where are we going to be? You know, I don't ever remember in the history of Mayor Kim as serving as all previous Alder and myself serving here, we've never had layoffs. And it was the most painful thing I've ever gone through. And I was just an elected. I can't imagine the fear and all the range of emotions that staff went through because there was a lot of concerns and I understood that. And I don't ever want to have to purposely put ourselves in a position where I felt that I was part of putting us at risk for doing that. I just have concerns that we're going too fast. When we talk about like the full-time people we have, there's like 100, 107, whatever. You know, you go ahead and you take away police and fire. I don't have that number, but does that reduce us by 40, 50, whatever? So then you talk about that we re-evaluated 40. I mean, how many people are we really looking at really that we have to do, that's imperative that we do? You know, we talk about those 10. I haven't heard anyone say, and maybe it doesn't matter, but you know, are they a single department? Are they just a couple departments? And then we also have police and fire where we're talking about that we're still looking at doing something internally that we need to address as a council. I just think we need to slow down a little bit. I have not talked to administration about this with what I'm about to just possibly suggest, and I'm certainly not looking to put any more work on anyone else's plate. So forgive me when I say this out loud, but you know, do we take that $16,000 and put it, you know, towards future wages, whatever increases, but maybe refer it back to administration and, you know, and give it to our city administrator and HR, because I believe Rick, in your previous position, that was part of what you did, right? I know HR has a lot on their plate. So that's just, I'm just spitballing here. I don't know, but I just think we've already had the tools. We know our people more than anyone. And I like us to consider the possibility that we do our own internal studies. If we've already had the big one done, we spent that money, maybe we look inside to do. We have great people on board and maybe we trust them to do that. I'll shut up. Thank
I
you.
want to
Veronica.
let each of the alders
Absolutely.
talk and
Thank
then
you,
we'll
Beth.
go to staff. Larry Jurassic and then Mike, you'll be next.
I hate to be the last one, but I pretty
You're
much
not.
agree with
Mike
everybody.
is.
Oh, okay. I pretty much agree with everybody has said already, so beating a dead horse is relevant, so I will not support this issue at all.
Thank you. Mike?
Yeah, I guess I was a little bit naive last week at their meeting, but you know, when I think about a wage study, you know, I look at the positives that are behind it, which we haven't focused on the positives. I know there's a lot of things that are, from what we're hearing up here, are against it, but at the end of the day, we do have 40 new positions or updated positions since the last time. And I think that's where staff is coming from is, you know, we have this need out there to possibly do this. And I'm not saying that maybe this is the best time to do it, but one thing I did like about how this lined up was it really lines up for when the contract negotiation for union pay is coming up next for fire and police with that 3-year mark ending in 2025. So I guess one of the things that I was thinking about is how it lined up well with it. And that's, I guess, where I'm coming from, but totally understand where everybody else is. And I've had some conversations and I can see how it could lead to some extra frustration that might not need to be out there. But that's kind of where I'm coming from.
Okay, let's hear from staff, starting with Rick, and then I'll go to Amanda next, and then anyone else from staff.
That's good. Thank you. And I understand everybody's concerns. I myself went through a compensation study when I was at my last employer and it was unpleasant. Some of the concerns that I would have, you know, if we wait too long to do any kind of compensation study, I don't think it would ever be recommended in the industry that you never do one again. And so if we wait too long, you start looking at issues where you start getting too far apart and then you have to try and catch up at that point in time. So that is one of the concerns when you do that. Doing it at this point in time because of all the factors that have gone into play, whether it be inflation, you know, after COVID, just any number of job factors that are going on, people leaving the workforce, the fact that there are not applicants for positions when they happen. in my opinion, makes it important to do it sooner rather than later. Do we do it this month? Do we do it next month? Do we do it next year? You know, that's up for debate, of course. But again, that kind of goes back to the longer you wait, we wait to do something like this, the more, in my opinion, the more painful it will be at that point in time. I get that there have been the last time around that it was extremely painful. I get that piece of it. You know, if it comes back, if the study comes back and there is a large number, that's when, yes, you look at what are some options. We can't do things we can't afford when it comes to the city. And so when whatever recommendation it is, you know, work with them. Is there a phased in approach? Is there different ways to approach it instead of doing it all or nothing at one point in time? Problem is, it's hard to specifically answer that particular question because we don't know what that number is. My understanding is that it was quite large the last time. My hope would be is because it apparently corrected, for lack of better words, a lot of things, that it wouldn't be as big of an amount this time around. Pure speculation, again, until the results come in, obviously we wouldn't know that. One of the bigger concerns for me is also those individuals who are at or near the top of the scale. You know, at some point in time in the very, very near future, in fact, I think starting next year, there will be no more step increases for certain individuals. And that is only going to continue the longer we wait because our wage scale is going to stay the same at this point in time. Yes, there are COLAs. COLAs are not guaranteed in any given year. It all depends on what the financial picture is. So there are some concerns for those individuals as well. So those are just a couple of things I wanted to bring up in regards to the longer we wait. I do think the more painful it's going to be. And then there are some staff who are going to start feeling the sting of us not doing something when it comes to those individuals.
Thank you for that, Rick. Amanda?
I was just going to add, and I guess more of a point of clarification is this is not a full wage study. And so I might turn it over to Amy, who can probably better describe sort of what this particular review would look like. But I want to be careful when we talk that we keep using the word compensation study or wage study. This is not actually a full wage study that is being proposed. So Amy, do you want to just maybe kind of talk about the differences and the more limited scope of what this is?
And why it's important?
Thank you. Yes, this is not the full-blown compensation study. And again, I know that the city, I came in after the compensation study, and so I wasn't privy to all that entailed. But that is something that in the industry, that's about every 5-7 years. So to say never to do a compensation study again would not be advisable. But what you do in the meantime, there are market analysis, like every 3 years in the industry is something that would be recommended. This is not even that. This is an internal equity analysis and refresh, if you will, of our pay plan. It's important to know the distinction because again, this is at a much lower cost than what a market analysis would be or a full-blown compensation study. So again, because we've had so much change to our pay structure for our 68 non-represented positions or employees that we have out there, it's important that we evaluate them all as a whole. Again, we've had some that have been reclassified, but again, those were reclassified internally. And then we've got a number that have not been looked at. And so again, turning this over to the experts, people that do this for a living, to look at them as a whole would be very important and beneficial. So with this, it's important to know that the city is starting to outgrow that pay plan. And so what are we going to do? Just to kind of echo what our administrator said, is that is going to start to affect our employees. And so it's important that you know, as we start to outgrow that pay plan, what our options are. And so that's part of what this analysis would provide, again, to those experts in the field that do this day in, day out. Does that answer any questions? Is there anything that I can help answer?
Thank you, Amy. Stay there and then we'll go to the counselors for questions that you would like to ask staff. So who has a question? We'll start with Mike since you went last time.
I just had a question about the step increases for those that are topping out, and Rick or Amy, doesn't matter who takes this, but if we don't do this study, is there a way where we can still look at those folks and, look at changing that? Or is that not possible?
That is not part of our pay structure, our pay plan. So again, once you reach the top step, the only thing that those employees would be eligible for would be those COLAs. So again, they would be missing out on that step increase. And while other peers would continue to get that increase, they would not.
Thank you.
Okay, Larry, do you have any questions for staff? Dan, do you have any questions for staff?
I do have some comments, I guess. Now I realize I can only speak for myself and not for council, but I think I can get the gist. And I just want staff to know that I don't think there's anybody up here who's elected at all that thinks that we should not be paying our staff what they deserve. They're worth it. I believe everyone up here would pay them 100% of the value if that were in the cards of what we could do. So we do have a difficult position where sometimes, you know, that pot of gold only goes up so high, and we got to try to make it work the best that we can for everyone. As far as wage studies go in general, when I say never again, I kind of meant for me. I understand that from time to time, a wage study is appropriate. To me, 5 years was too recent, especially knowing that we fell off of it like the very next year. Doing a full-blown wage study, I think maybe once a decade, to me, seems like that might be more palatable. So I guess that's not really a question for Amy, but I do have faith in our HR department. Amy Franston, you are a superb HR manager. If we do stuff internal and we're keeping our $16,000 and putting it to COLA or at least somewhere use in the city, and if you are able to continually monitor wages, and if there's something that we have to make an adjustment midway through, just bring it to council. I mean, I don't understand why we find it necessary to have to go continually to outside help, especially if these are internal changes. So we should continually be monitoring internally the wages of people, and when feasible and when appropriate, make the necessary adjustments. So that would be my thoughts. Thank you, Mayor.
Rick, to avoid putting Amy on the spot, would you like to address that?
Well, I just wanted to add one thing, it's difficult when you do one at a time or maybe two or three at a time versus everybody. Because then if you're not consistently applying it across everything, then all of a sudden you start having different, there's such thing as compression issues. Or there might be situations where you're too far apart between similar type of qualifications or job duties and responsibilities. So it's a challenge when you don't do all of it at one time. So that's why this, equity analysis is more appropriate than just looking at it from time to time. Obviously, I wasn't here when those 40 reclassifications or reassessments were done. When I saw that there were that many done since the last compensation study, that I was shocked. That is, from my experience anyhow, that is unusual. I'm not saying they weren't justified. I'm just saying that is unusual to have that many done that close to a compensation study. So that part of it was surprising to me. But the other piece of it is when it comes to HR reviewing, if somebody might come out of alignment, so to speak, that is also a staffing issue. HR is already bare bones staffed the way they are right now. And so in order to maybe monitor to the extent that it needs to be monitored, I don't know that the Human Resources has the staff in order to accommodate that at this time. So those are just a couple of concerns based on some comments that were made that I would want to respond with.
Would you at least agree with me that Amy Franston is a superb HR?
No question about it whatsoever.
Unanimous.
Hi.
Amanda, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I was just gonna sort of echo, what Administrator Niemeyer said. You run into some legal concerns too when you start looking at, only a couple at a time. I mean, without even intending to, suddenly you review one department, but then maybe you've hit a department where, the department is all male or all female, or, there's just so many factors that can come into it. I would really advocate against any approach like that. I think you have to look at it as a collective whole.
Okay, Amy, did you want to add anything to that? Okay, all right, Stephen, we're trying to do questions.
Yeah, I got questions. Okay, so doesn't the COLA consider inflation? I know that was one of the issues that came up. I mean, COLA considers inflation, correct?
Okay, we'll let Sabrina answer that one.
Thank you. So, at F&P on Wednesday of last week, we had some discussions, and I did run a little analysis to evaluate CPI of the Midwest region compared to the COLA increases that we've had since this salary study went into place. So in July of 2021, which is when we would want to look at the CPI when we're working on the budget, the inflation for the Midwest region was 5.9%. That year, the following year in 2022, we gave a COLA of 2.25. But again, remember that salary study had just gone in place and that was a rough budget year. So we did what we could. Then in July of 2022, the CPI was at 8.6%. In 2023, we did a 1.25 in January and a 1.25 in July of 2023. So nowhere close to CPI. Then in July of 2023, inflation was at 2.9%. The state came in and they saved us. So last year, the council was gracious enough to give a 2% COLA in January and then a 4% COLA in July. So that was huge for staff. Then as of July of 2024, CPI is at 2.7% right now. And I look at the 12-month average when I'm looking at the CPI. So we right now, for the 2025 budget, are looking at a 1.5% COLA in January and a 1.5% COLA in July. So if you take the totals of those percentages since 2021, the CPI is at 20.1%, the increases over those 4 years. And then if you take a look at what we've, been able to do for staff, again, projected for 2025, since that hasn't been approved yet, we're at 13.75%. So that's a difference of 6.35 when we're talking strictly CPI to what the city has been able to do. Granted, I don't think anybody was able to keep up with inflation. When we look at anywhere in the market for 2021 and 2022, those were outliers. They were huge. As your finance director, I echo a lot of the discussions that have been had tonight. I'm not worried about the $16,000 to do the study. I am more concerned with what are they going to come back with? How do we implement this? And I've shared those concerns with Rick as well. And he said, well, likely they'll come back and they'll have maybe a large number, maybe not, of what they feel we need to do to make things right here with the city. We don't have room for 2025. I'm going to be honest. We don't. We're working through the budget process right now. We just don't. We do not have any room to increase wages, in my opinion. I mean, that at the end of the day, it will be your decision. But right now, I don't see that possibility for 2025. 2026, I don't know where we'll be at. I know there's discussions about fire service fees and referendums and those things. But right now, I just know that we can't do it in 2025.
Thank you for that, Sabrina. Stephen?
I still have a few questions, but yeah, and again, my question was, do we not take COLA in consideration? It wasn't, do we not match it? We tried to. All right, next is, I notice in this memo, says under the 2 sub-bullets, develop new pay plan or adjust existing with updated grade assignments. Can grade assignments be reduced based upon this look? And if so, do the staff understand that?
My answer to that would be is nobody would be going down in wages, but Amy can answer anything more beyond that. But that would be my position, is that nobody would be going down or be going backwards in wages.
I mean, wouldn't it be looking at what their duties and responsibilities are?
Certainly.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying that that's what I expect, but that could be a risk, correct?
Correct. And how that's been handled in the past is basically that employee becomes what we call redlined. So they stay where they're at. They don't go down in wages, but now when that person leaves and we refill that position, it goes back to resets to where it should be.
Okay. And next is we talk about 10 employees either at or approaching maximum pay. I guess is the only one comment I have. I still have another question after it. Is that pretty much every position in any company, city, anywhere there's going to be a maximum pay level that would only be adjusted now based upon COLA more than likely. Even the POTUS has that, President of the United States. I mean, there's, it's not like, well, every year I get to go up. It's set by Congress in this case. Yeah, so, and those senior positions, what have you, or the people who've just been here for that long period of time, those positions that where that maximum pay is, it's ultimately based on the responsibilities for and duties for a city our size. We can't get into the business of where somebody stays for 40 years and therefore they have to get paid just like somebody would be in that position in New York City or whatever. I mean, I'm using extreme, but it's so I don't know if that actually resonates real strongly. The last thing is, I have a question for Sabrina. When would we reasonably have a reasonable estimate of our 2026 general fund? Now, I'm not talking the budget sequence. I'm talking like in July, would we kind of have a pretty good idea of where we are for looking at 2026?
Usually it's a better estimate in August.
In August?
Because we get net new construction.
And I'm
And that
wondering-
tells us how much we can increase our operating levy.
I'm wondering maybe we might want to consider tabling this until August. It's just something I'm throwing out there for possible consideration and discussion also.
August to 2025,
Yes, so look at 2026.
it's gonna be a different council, though.
I understand.
Raise that back up.
Yeah. We can table it for however long we want. So it's a vote. So, but at least in August, we might have a reasonable understanding of what 2026 looks like and whether or not this is even reasonable to do.
Okay, let's let Amanda say what she wants to say, and then it'll be Diane's turn to ask some questions.
Sabrina, would it take something drastic in the next couple of years to expand the budget to have the money to pay for something like this? I mean, do you reasonably anticipate that we would have growth in the budget in the next 3 years to pay for wage increases of a decent size?
It would take the state giving more in shared revenue or a large growth within the city. To be able to do a large salary increase, especially with the union contracts coming due, and we will likely have a large dollar figure there as well to handle for 2026.
I think this council and future councils are going to have really hard decisions in the future. But I think that information can be beneficial. And so I think you can look at this two ways. You can look at this with, I'm doing this study to gain information, or I'm doing the study to implement immediately what I find. And I think that this council with these hard decisions is going to have to look at some of the things that Sabrina previously mentioned, whether that's fire service fees, a referendum, alternative fees that are not fire service fees, but are other fees that the city can charge in order to balance our budget in the next several years. And that pay will always be part of that conversation. And so I would just encourage everybody to consider that in this discussion when you talk about the timing, because when you talk about timing of next August, it's too late. Like you can't do a fee, you can't do a referendum, like you've missed your opportunity. And so at what point do you want this information to make those decisions?
Okay, thank you for that, Amanda. Stephen, do you have any more questions right now? Are you okay?
I think I have another thought, but it's probably not.
Okay, we can come
time
back
yet.
to it.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, Diane, it's your turn.
Thank you, Your Honor. So, and again, I have to agree with Alder Stevens, what he said earlier when he was representing council with the statements. I mean, the decisions that we have to make are really tough ones, and that's why we're in the positions that we are. But I can't disagree with City Attorney Jackson that, yeah, obviously August is way too late, because if you're trying to figure out a budget, it's like, it's just way too late. So I get how you just framed that about the, about you want to get the information? I mean, looking forward, we're going to have to do something. And I don't think, I'll speak for myself when I say this out loud, is that, what I talked about last week, we have to do something. We can't stick our head in the sand. But my concern was, I just felt that maybe we're just moving a little bit too fast since if this isn't going to take effect for 25, there's just a lot to consider. And that's why I was just looking to maybe just slower roll a little bit, just kind of think about this is, not to say that I'm going to be against going forward, but I just thought that we just need to maybe refer it for 30 days at least, or whatever anyone was thinking of doing. But I think we just need to see if there's any other approach we can take, and I certainly understand, HR is already bare bones, but that's why I kind of offered possibly our city administrator, but I'll let you guys all figure that out. But we need to do something. We cannot ignore it because this is not going to go away. And at the end of the day, we need to make sure that people are paid fairly. And, but we're going to have to really put the brakes on these reorgs because reorgs have really screwed us up. And they need to be done very judiciously and wisely and slowly. Thank you.
Okay, I guess I just have a question maybe to go to Rick, like say the council did decide to wait 30 days to act. I mean, is there any, I'm going to assume that staff has vetted this recommendation out fully. Is there what would be your next recommendation if council doesn't like this one?
Certainly, we would have to go back and have that discussion. Yes, this was vetted. We had a Zoom call with Baker Tilly to go over what this was. There were actually, I think, 4 or 5 different tiers of different reviews you could do. This actually was the lowest level one that we could possibly do. So at least they didn't have any other options that I'm aware of. So we would have to go back and talk, and we'd have to look at, is there some other option in some other forum that we could take a look at? And, I don't know anything off the top of my head, but this was the most inexpensive one that they had available.
Okay, thank you. I'll open it up to anybody for comment or discussion. Alder Stevens?
I just want to reiterate that when we know how much that we have to work with, and we're looking at people that are potentially at the top of the scale, I mean, the COLA still helps. It helps everybody. And I look at this as we have 2 problems. We have a compression problem, and then we have an inflation problem. We don't have enough resources to fix both of them. We don't really have enough resources to fix one of them, but we can make a big stab at that inflation problem with COLA. I would be elated if we had enough money to bring us up the shortfall from the nice pretty chart that Sabrina made for us. If we do that, you can't tell me that that doesn't help staff. You can't tell me that that doesn't help morale. And I can't stress enough, we need to leave some resources available for the next union contract. I've been part of that team, and they've been very gracious. We've been very fortunate to have the people in our police force that we've had and the fire department. And we would need to give them the tools to be able to keep and retain talent in both departments. And I don't want us to pigeonhole ourselves with our resources. We have to be able to meet the upcoming challenges that we know about. Amanda's point is well taken. Information is always a good thing, but I still think that $16,000 is better saved within the city and spread amongst staff.
Thank you for that, Alder Stevens. Sabrina, I'm sorry to put you on the spot, but $16,000 approximately, what if that was divided among the unrepresented staff?
It's insignificant, I grant you, but
Maybe 1%.
Yeah.
I mean, we'd be lucky with one, it wouldn't even be 1%. When you take into effect FICA and WRS, like it wouldn't be much. But it's definitely something I know Alder Wolf has asked for this and others have as well. When we, get to the end of 2024, if we're lucky enough to be in a position where we have a surplus again, we can try to set money aside. But that just puts us in a hole for the following year when you do
Right.
that. Whenever you use reserves for operating purposes, it puts you in a hole when you start the next year. So I never really recommend that, that we would ever use reserves for operating purposes. I did agree that, you know, if we are doing a study, like if it's a one-time expense, to use reserves for this, we have a city study account, from the past that was used. But for the actual cost of implementing it, we'd have to have something in place.
Okay, now let's see, Stephen Knott.
Real briefly again, I guess I just don't see a benefit of spending $16,000 and getting information that we have very little ability to actually do anything with, is what I'm basically hearing. All right, we got all this wonderful information. Now what do we do? Well, the resources are still what they are. So I don't know why we would do that. And I don't think what, and again, you can correct me, Dan, but I don't think Dan is recommending that $16,000 is what we would just consider for COLA. I'm thinking he's saying that that could be added to whatever else we're considering. So,
Okay,
Retained for other
yeah,
purposes.
for whatever, yeah, exactly. But
okay, anyone else at all? Alder Wolf.
I don't know if anyone has any interest in this, but considering we have 2 meetings of capital improvements coming up the next couple of months, and then we have budget. I move that we refer this agenda item until the December council meeting to give administration time to talk and either come back with another plan, or maybe we'll just pick up where we left off, and maybe we'll have some time cooling off period. But I know there's a lot, you know, everyone in this room has a lot going on with, you know, everything this time of year. And the last thing I want to do is put more pressure on everyone, but maybe, so my motion is to refer to December council meeting.
Okay, the motion on the floor is to refer to the December council meeting. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Motion has been made by Alder Wolf and seconded by Alder Jurassic. Discussion.
I mean, the December date isn't a drop dead date, but we can always extend it past that too, so.
And the reason why I made the motion is that we can't lose sight of it. You know, we just can't lose sight of it. We have to do something. I don't know what that is, but like I said, maybe someone will have an epiphany, or maybe we just need to have a cooling off period. But staff just needs to understand, at least from my point of view, that, you know, we all know the challenges that we have in front of us, and we certainly are not ignoring them, but our backs are up against the wall. But I'm just hopeful that pot of money will suddenly appear. And did Dan Wick find any money in the walls of the old community center? Okay.
He did, but it crumbled.
It was too wet. He couldn't get separated.
I'll bring a blow dryer.
Okay, any other discussion on the motion to refer? Okay, the motion on the floor now is to refer to the December council meeting. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. This motion is referred. Okay, good job, Mike. Item 11, Board of Public Works. Stephen?
we have a correction to pay estimates. Oh. Okay. There are a total of 16 items. It is on page 22. And I'll move. I'm sorry? Oh, what, under 11A was number 6. Yeah. Is what's new. And I'll go ahead and make a motion to approve.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion on the floor to approve the pay estimates as corrected. The motion was by Stephen Knott, seconded by Alder Wolf. Is there further discussion? Not seeing any. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Item 12, Alderperson Wolf, reports.
Thank you, Your Honor. I just want to give a quick report on a recent inspection ride along that I did with Brad Newmeister. Just want to express my sincere appreciation for the time that he took with me. This is maybe my third one I've taken with him, and If anyone's never taken a ride along with the city inspector, it is always very interesting. He had previously taken me to the first building on Abbey Court some time ago. We visited the second 82 unit apartment building. And I understand there was one more 82 unit building that has been approved but has yet to be built. And we also spent considerable time at the Onalaska Middle School. That was very interesting to see the inside before start of school. So I feel any ride along always gives me an increased perspective of what our staff does and the challenges they face. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you. Item 13, city attorney report.
All right, we are going to shift gears a little bit and let's talk about public arts. So you may remember that several months ago, staff brought forward an art policy that was many pages long and I think maybe overwhelmed some of you. And you sent it back for staff to sort of review, revise, and bring forward. And so we have been kicking this around internally, talking about what changes we could make, should make, maybe looking at other communities. And so we decided that we wanted to sort of take a little bit of a step back. And so when we created the art policy, we did so based on models we looked at around the state of Wisconsin as well as around the country, in which the municipality in question was funding public art. And so when we did that policy, we put together a proposed mechanism for that, but we drafted the policy with that in mind. And so as we look at moving forward, we felt as staff that that was sort of a fundamental question that we needed answered prior to making changes to what we've proposed. Does the city have any interest in funding public art? And so the traditional mechanism for funding public art on a municipality side is through the CIP budget. Generally speaking, they will pick either a small percentage of the overall CIP budget, or they will take a very small percentage of projects of a certain size, and they will designate that money for the use for public art. And then it becomes sort of like a grant or a pot of money that the city, whether it's via a committee or via staff or however it's managed, can essentially work with outside organizations, artists, et cetera, to obtain public art on behalf of the city. And so just for an example, it could be something like 0.5% of all projects in the capital improvement budget over, say, $500,000 or some amount like that. It did, back when staff proposed this, we did talk to DPW Director Jared Holter, who was on board with that. He felt like if we picked a number that was high enough so that it wasn't going to be a bunch of projects each year, but rather 1 or 2 projects each year, that it was a good way to sort of improve the community as we're improving the community in other ways. But I won't speak for Jared too much tonight. And so there are pros and cons to this philosophy, from funding public art and embedding our community through art, but also taking away money from the capital improvement project. But we are just sort of looking at what is council's feeling on this, because what we will bring back for an art policy will sort of depend on whether or not this is a path we want to go down. If you're wishy-washy, we will approach it one way. If you're like, yes, let's fund public art, we'll probably approach it a different way. And if you're like, we absolutely don't want to, then we'll approach it a totally different way yet again. So there's really no agenda here. We just are looking for feedback.
Okay. Who would like to go first? Stephen Knott.
Okay, so in my view, public funding of art has major pitfalls. The art, and I'm using my, 2 sets of fingers for when the minutes are written to put it in quotations, the art over time can trend or might even likely become politicized and driven not by the artists or by the art appreciating public, but instead by elected officials. And I think that I could cite several examples of that around the United States when that has happened. And so I believe that true art is created in the minds of an artist to meet a demand for further beauty by an art appreciating public. And it is not driven by taxpayer dollars where elected officials kind of determine what they want. That's my view.
Thank you, Stephen. Anyone else? Dan Stevens?
So I guess in full disclosure, I was the founding president of the Onalaska Art Keepers. I have since timed out due to the operating agreement, but I am still a director and I'm actually the communications director, so this is appropriate. Personally, I actually have mixed emotions on the use of public funds for art. Traditionally, both the Onalaska Art Keepers specifically, but other groups in general, have done a pretty good job of raising money privately to make the artistic things happen. And I can point to several different examples. The sculpture at Great River Landing was all privately funded. Government did kind of have to come in and allot land for us to put that there, but I think that's worked out pretty well for the city. Any other project that we've done has really, to my knowledge, not cost the city anything. So I was surprised at the results of the study that came out and said that there was a lot of support for public art. There are lots of ways that we could employ this that I believe would lift the city as a whole. And I know Stevens, I understand the point that, you know, an artist got money from the National Endowment of the Arts and it was like, you know, a picture of Ronald Reagan in a jar of urine and they got taxpayer dollars for that. And that sort of stuff just like should not happen. The goal should be something that the public can enjoy and broadly and uniformly enjoy. We just commissioned the art piece on at 215 Main Street at the Big River Canine Building. It's come out fabulous and we've gotten just an absolute ton of positive feedback. And we'll get questions like, you know, is this costing the city anything? No, it's not. But there are cases where we could do things in the city that would be very interesting, and I believe it would elevate the city. And ultimately, it could have a cascading effect that would benefit everybody, you know, and property values and attract talent and business and creative people and tech people. And just today, I actually had a conversation with the city administrator and we were discussing doing sculptures in roundabouts. And like, we weren't looking to do anything political or anything that's offensive. I mean, we were talking about encapsulating the natural beauty of the area. And maybe you get like a little 5-foot sculpture of a sunfish at one. So like, you know, the Cooley Golf Bowl roundabout might be the eagle roundabout. And then we got the sunfish roundabout and you got like a stag roundabout or something like that. And so we're taking our infrastructure that we have that has a very utilitarian purpose and we're adding an aesthetic. Now imagine if you are coming in and you're touring the area and you're going to get a job at Train or whatever company, and they take you on a tour and you drive through a city and you're like, hey, Onalaska was really cool. I mean, they had these murals, they had these sculptures. If you can get the city to participate in that and accelerate that, there is a benefit. Cities that invest in art go up in value quicker. It attracts people. It attracts other businesses. Potentially, we may get more revenue over time based off of that growth. And I understand Stephen's point that, you know, like the CIP is the CIP and there's never enough money to do everything, never even to do a third of what you want to do. And we have roads that need repairs and we have buildings we need to build and we need to buy fire trucks and stuff like that. But I think what Amanda's talking about, like 0.5% on anything over $500,000, that's not that much. And I still believe that the private sector is going to really do the heavy lifting on this as they have done in the past. Having started the 501c3 organization, I am amazed at how generous our community has been to our organization. our goal, we have a purpose where we're not trying to amass wealth and we can't get rid of our money fast enough before we start another project. It's really weird. If 501c3, you should always be like desperate to, get an extra dollar, and people just keep giving us money and we keep putting stuff in the community. And the takeaway from that is the community really likes this. They really appreciate it. I was watching our artist over on Main Street right before an interview. How many people stopped? People driving, they're rubbernecking, they're looking, people stop and talking with us saying how awesome this looks. And on some level, I'm okay if we just let the private sector continue to do it. But I have heard the public, I've seen the results of the study. I think there's an appetite for this, and what Amanda had proposed is pretty minuscule after everything's said and done. And I think we should listen to the community, and I think they're saying they're okay with this. So if it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen, but I think people might want it. Thank you.
Yep. Larry Jurassic.
Thank you, Mayor. I fully support their art for the city too, but I'd like to see a basic amount being put aside with a line number to it instead of a percentage. I don't know whether it be $500 or $5,000, just something that every year we contribute that much to it. That way the city's not, if something bad does come up like a purple egg, we could say, well, we weren't fully behind it. We weren't fully behind it. It's just that it's another entity that we are supporting. You just look at the senior center and all the money that we're getting in for that. It's really amazing of what support we get with this town. But that's my input. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Mike, did you want to give input on this topic?
I guess I just had a question, if this was something we went forward with, and like, let's say the Onalaska Art Keepers or different organizations coming and they want to contribute, what are the steps for them to be able to take advantage of something like this? Is that coming to council? Is that coming to FMP? I guess I'm just curious how that would work.
So that is what we would tackle next.
Okay.
So sort of, we had put together a mechanism that sort of addressed that. I mean, it did have a process for that. We're still kind of looking that over to see if we would want to make changes, but I think, depending on the feedback, if the feedback is no tonight, we will go and we will work on a policy that removes, any possibility of a process like that and bring that back. If the answer is maybe we would like to fund art, then I think we will come back next month with choices on how you fund that, whether it's a percentage, whether it's simply $5,000 a year and you want to include that as a line item in the CIP. Whatever that may be, we would come back with different options on how to fund it. And then, that would go for you for review.
Thank you. And just to end my thought on this, I do support this. I think, when we look at the projects that have been done, some a long time ago and some recent as the mural going up now, I hear nothing but positive things, and, it's something that does beautify our city. So.
Alder Wolf, you haven't had a chance yet. Did you want to say something before we start round two?
Sure, thank you. So I happened to be downtown Friday night at Mary Cody's, and upon leaving, I went to leave and excuse me, Cody Sanderson, the mural artist, was there, and I introduced myself to him and had a conversation about how wonderful the mural looked, and I think it's beautiful. Contrary to what some people think, I am very pro art. I'm very pro murals. I think it's a fantastic addition to our community. When I went to, there's a couple there that must have overheard my conversation with Cody, and they walked out. They said, "Oh, I didn't mean to eavesdrop, but what mural are you talking about?" And I said, "Come with me." So I walked them out, and showed it, and they were an older couple from La Crosse, and they were just mesmerized by it. I mean, they just thought it was the coolest thing. And I gave kudos to Onalaska Art Keepers and the organization of what they did, and talked about Oak a little bit. And And my parting words to them was, well, come back. You're always welcome in Onalaska and see what else, the art community is going to be doing in the future. So, but they were just, it was just really nice to hear people have that buzz. So I totally support in going forward, as far as additional art in the community. I know when I spent 5 days in Rochester a couple months ago, I did a 2-3 hour excursion. Once I realized that they had a number of murals there, and I put on 60 miles just driving all over Rochester looking at murals. But I do take exception though with a comment earlier about the responses. So I have the survey that was done March of 23. And the bad thing or the hard thing with surveys is that you get a very limited number of people who will go ahead and respond. And we can't control that. I mean, we could always maybe try to do like an additional one or something, but it's kind of a crapshoot, excuse my language. But we got 132 responses, which is 0.00664 of citizens of Onalaska. So it was a very, very tiny sampling of the people. So, and of those 132 responses, the question was, should the city fund public art? 130 people answered, 2 skipped. And so 88 people said yes, which was 67.69, and 42 people said no, 32.31. So of those 88 people, we're down to 0.004494 of our city of Onalaska said they think that we should be funding city, with taxpayer dollars. I think that there was a lot of good questions in here, and we got a lot of good, some of the questions were, in which public places would you like to see art? And they went into great detail, and all the answers are on here. And different types of art. And then lastly was, should the city fund public art? And at the end, it allegedly 100% of them lived in the city of Onalaska. My concern would be, as much as I support art personally and in our community, my concern would be, we all see what our capital improvements list looks like every single year. And that's my that's my number one, that's really my dilemma. It's like, I think 2 years in a row, we said no to the fire bay floors because it's $15,000 that we didn't have. So this is my dilemma. And I just don't know how in good conscience, when we're looking at public safety, and y'all, I don't need to tell y'all, what's in the capital improvement list. And this last one was that 19 million or whatever it was. And we know, I mean, our finance director has already said that, when Cheryl or not asked at Board of Public Works last week, maybe like a number, I think you said about 3.5 or ish, $10 or $20 or $30,000 really goes a long way to, I think about what you can buy at IT. I think about what kind of doors and protections you can buy at the Omni Center. Like I said, I think it'd be a great idea. I love art. The mural knocked it out of the park. Just beautiful. But I just don't know for myself how I can answer to my constituents and the taxpayers that, I mean, I hope that what I am about to say is taken in the context is what it said, and how I say and how I mean it, is that I've had some constituents share with me privately that they think that the art community is doing really good funding themselves right now. But I also want to add to that they've also taken on a lot of responsibility for all that they have done, and they should be applauded for what they have currently done up to this point. I'm not one who feels comfortable saying, well, they should keep going down that road. They've done a really great job, because I think that's a lot of responsibility to put on them. But on the flip side, at this point, I struggle with thinking that we're going to be able to carve something out in capital improvements when we just got done talking about wages and COLAs in a wage study, and now we're talking about possibly public art. So anyway, that's all I have. Thank you, Your Honor.
Okay, so we'll give everyone one last chance to give input on public funding, funding public art, and Stephen Knott has been waiting.
So I just want to remind everyone, the discussion is not on whether each of us supports art projects. It's on what the motivation is, how it's going to be paid for. That's all. I myself have voted on multiple occasions to accept art that was donated to the city. I believe everyone here has done so as well. So it's not about whether or not we support art. I want to make sure that that is clear because it's come up in conversations. It's all about who resources it. All right. Now, what I just heard from Dan is that the private sector is doing just fine on receiving support from the local community for art projects. If that is the case, why does the public need to provide more resources? I still submit that public money can change the entire motivation of the artistic community from creating something from their hearts to something for getting the grants. And what I mean by that is maybe in any given year, artists in the local area don't have any ideas for that year. But if there is money sitting on that table, because we have dedicated $5,000 was mentioned as an option, sitting up, someone's going to apply for that. So the motivation now becomes, well, the grant is out there, let's apply for it and we'll create some art. It changes the whole motivation of the artistic community, and I just cannot support public funding of art, period. I just can't. So.
Okay, thank you for that. Anyone else want to make any final comments on funding public arts? Alder Stevens.
So I guess a couple points here. When talking about percentages, I mean, some of us have been elected here with, I don't know, maybe like 20% of the electorate. Some people have gotten their seats with 300-400 votes. So to say that only 136 people did a survey, we have to put that into context. I do get the point, but if you're going to do that, you got to apply those numbers to everything. If it's a straight up line item, I don't have a problem if they did $2,500 a year to an art fund as a straight up line item, but going through that CIP budget, if you don't make this a priority and you don't have it kind of as a protected or different mechanism for funding, it's going to be the first thing that gets cut year after year after year. So like, and if that's the consensus, then fine. But if the public agrees that this is important and maybe, you know, maybe it needs to be kind of brought out there again and get more of a reaffirmation if we're going to go down that road. If we're going to do that, you need to make it a priority. And I don't think we're talking about a lot of money. I think we're maybe talking about hundreds, if not a few $1,000s. And then the third point is, this would be the city's money. It's not a grant for artists to go do whatever they want. This is the city saying, we're going to do an art project. The city can decide. Presumably the council or the committee that we have and say, you know what, we think would be really cool over by, you know, our senior center is this thing. And then they make that happen. And if somebody wants to do something, like, it doesn't have to be in grant form. The city is the owner of the art. They are the commissioner of the art. They are the ones that would decide to make that happen. Not, hey, Onalaska Art Keepers or so-and-so artist, you know, like, come get money and go do something. I don't think that's how that was envisioned at all. The private sector, be it the Art Keepers or any other organization, are going to continue to do the things that they're doing regardless of what we decide here today. The difference is, does the city want to be a player? Because at this point, especially if it's on private property, the Art Keepers and other organizations are going to do whatever they want to do as long as it meets code. And Katie doesn't get upset with us. I don't think Katie would get upset with us. The difference is, does the city want to be an active participant in what goes on here, aside from, well, here's some public land, maybe they could put something there. So that's a stark difference. I think a nominal amount, I mean, just go back. I mean, we're talking about $16,000 we got in the budget. We could make that happen. It's not that big of a deal. It's so insignificant that it wouldn't even make a difference on COLAs is what I'm hearing. So $1,000 a year and we're saying absolutely not, really? So I just think we need to recalibrate our perspective and yeah, I like the idea of that percentage on the CIP. It reminds me of like the park fund. The park fund is used. It's not that people get grants and make parks. The city decides at some point, hey, we've got this money in the park fund. This is this cool thing that we want to do. And here's the funds that's going to make it happen. I envision this working the same way. So on a much smaller scale.
Okay, thank you, Alder Stevens. Any other last comments? Larry Jurassic?
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to see the funds go into even a partnership with the art committee. Whether it be a membership fee or something along those lines to where we're not really responsible for the art, but we're just helping out the community. It's just an idea.
Okay, thank you. Mike, did you want?
Yeah, I just have one last thing. So, as part of our mission statement for our future state of Onalaska, Onalaska is a vibrant and welcoming community. I think the art is a huge factor into that, and the welcomingness, the vibrancy that people see. So I think putting our money where our mouth is, as far as that goes, I think goes a long way. And that's just something that I think, moving forward, looking at the city, for us to back that as part of our mission statement, I think this is a good starting point.
Thank you for that. Anyone else?
I think I have a point of order.
Sure.
My understanding, Dan, did I understand that you are an officer still with the Art Keepers? Is that what I heard?
I am the director, yes.
And
I
now
am
we're
the
discussing
director.
about potentially having public funds going directly to the Art Keepers, but as a.
No,
potential-
no.
No, okay,
All that is on,
He suggested that. but
okay.
Let Amanda Jackson talk.
Okay.
please.
all that is on the table is whether the city has any interest in funding public art. That may not even involve a grant program. I simply threw that out as one means of an example.
Okay.
It could simply be that the city has a small fund and we purchase art. Maybe it's every 5 years and we just build that fund up over 5 years by throwing $3,000 a year into it. And then in the 5th year, we say, oh, okay, well, we've got about $15,000. We're going to go buy a piece of art and put it in this public space, this public building, whatever that may be. This is all very hypothetical. Like there is no commitment to do grants. There is no commitment to give any organization or artist any amount of money. This is simply sort of the fundamental question of, does the city fund art?
Okay, do you have enough input from the discussion? Can we close the discussion?
Yes.
Okay, let Diane didn't get her last chance, so you can do your final
Thank
comment.
you, Your Honor.
and then-
So Sabrina, as our finance director, so if it goes under CIP, I would assume that would go towards short-term borrowing then.
You're good if,
Yes, Sabrina Steger, please answer the question.
if it was the intent to, fund it on a yearly basis, my recommendation would be the equipment replacement fund if it was going to be a small dollar amount. And we could even do it, I mean, I know there's lots of options. We could do it at year end. If we have a surplus, we say, okay, we're going to put $3,000 into the special revenue fund for art or whatever it may be. Or we can say, we want to purchase this piece of art in the special project fund for art. We have $10,000, but it's 12,000. So we come to council and say, can we use $2,000 out of equipment replacement or whatever that may be? But there's lots of options.
Yeah, so I think
That's
like,
that, I would think with the small dollar amount that it probably wouldn't go on CIP, but I mean, I think that's up for discussion.
I just took issue with the possibility of, short-term borrowing to just kind of adds
No.
insult to injury. I'm like, gosh, if it goes through, we got to do something else, don't we?
I don't think it has to be funded through CIP. That's just a mechanism to come up with an amount, if that makes sense.
Okay.
So it could be funded through equipment and replacement, but we decide that the amount that year, each year will be based on the percentage of projects over. Or it could be a flat amount, or it could be something you decided at surplus. It's something, you could do it all of those ways.
Well, Well, and I think maybe, for me personally, I think maybe that's where I start getting in the weeds a little bit when we talk like about a percent. Because if you had like a very large, and because you look at a lot of our utility and you look at a lot of our big projects, and we have some big ones coming up, you know, they start generating a lot of dollars. But you know, if this doesn't help my case, but I've always believed in being full disclosure. You know, there was a time, and Dan Wick can back me on this, but you know, it was Centering in Alaska where I remember not that long ago, you know, they put in a budget for the wreaths, right, Dan? You know, there's a lot of things that we have done like for Centering in Alaska at one time, and it wasn't until, unfortunately, when I think Parks was down 1,000 hours not that many years ago, and we got 200 hours back just because of the watering program. And that's why it was decided a 6-0 vote. Previous council said we're going to stop watering, but that's kind of how the shift went with the whole thing with them going to La Crosse Community Foundation and all that. But I mean, we have done things for people. I think, I know, I heard what Larry said. My only issue with about this partnership thing is we have to be really, really, really careful about naming anyone, because there's a lot of people in this town. You know, there's Clearwater Farm. You know, there's a lot of people in this town that do a lot of things for our community. And we need to be very, very careful that we don't show favoritism. You know, whether it's, maybe it's, I mean, it's not anything that I don't support, but I would feel me personally, I'm just 106, but I would feel much more comfortable if we end up with like maybe if we consider it a set dollar amount, kept it out of capital improvements, which I think is a nightmare. Okay, because it's going to fluctuate all the time. So at least if we had more of and I'm just spitballing here because I'm just thinking as I'm going here. To me, it just seems that it would be, if we were to go down that path, something that would be a more consistent thing that could be budgeted, and it's just whatever amount that we decided on, and then local organizations could be privy to it, and you know, and maybe one criteria is that they don't. You know, you only get to play like once every 5 years, depending upon, and if no one else applies something, you know, but because I think people just keep hearing art, but there's a whole bunch of things I think that we possibly could do besides just art, even though I think art is a great thing. So I'm just throwing it out there.
Okay, and I think probably the discussion maybe got a little bit broader than was intended, because I think Amanda she's working on a policy so that we can handle art uniformly when we're placing art in public places.
Yeah.
And in developing that policy, she was looking for guidance if she should even consider us funding our own art or not.
So she doesn't have to go ahead and do a whole big policy.
And then have everyone say no.
No, yeah, and then she wastes all that time. And
Yes.
so,
Your Honor, I just feel compelled to make a clarifying statement. I just want to be very clear that the Onalaska Art Keepers is not looking for city taxpayer dollars. What we're talking about, the city would do its own thing, whether they want to partner with us or whatever, we can open the door down the road, but
Okay.
we're not we're not like, it's not a money grab. It's a separate entity we would encourage the city to explore.
But as a point of order, that's not relevant to the discussion on the floor at this moment. Okay, item 14, city administrator report.
I'm going to do this quite quickly, abbreviated version, since we have been here a while and we have a little ways to go yet. So just wanted to update, as you saw in the report there, just update on the RFPs. The ERP system interviews were held, and we're going through that. Hopefully we'll come forward with a recommendation in October. Community center groundbreaking was last week. Great turnout. I thought it went really well. I think everybody knows by now, after the ceremony, a time capsule was found. Still going through some of the items that were inside there, but they were from 1976, so it's kind of a cool thing. Demolition should be next week if all goes as planned of the building. The benefit work group has continued to meet, as you might recall. That started earlier this year, and I'm reviewing all the city's benefit policies. We've had a chance to at least go over all the policies once, and so we're going to go over just kind of a one more time run through of them, and so hopefully we'll start bringing those forward at some point in the near future as well. I think you've heard the new website has now been being promoted via social media. So if anybody asks about it, make sure and direct them to their new website. A bunch of staff trainings have been going on. As you may recall, you approved a bunch of funding or some funding for that some time back. I just gave an update there that we're in our last week of self-defense training, which has been very interesting and fun. CPR and Stop the Bleed training is coming up shortly. We have a presentation on the 19th of this month for establishing healthy boundaries, Staff Success Day, just a number of different things. I did want to point out that we do have 13 staff that are signed up for a Leadership Action Series. This is put on by CIVMIC. It's a virtual program. It's 10 sessions, so it's twice a month, starts in October, goes through, if I do my math correctly, I think February. And so 13 staff are signed up as a leadership course. And so I thought that was good that we had that many people sign up for it as well. The virtual option is a new thing that's being offered by them. So, and then the meetings and events are on there.
Thank you for that, Rick.
Mhm.
We'll continue on with item B.
Yes, just an update on the unsheltered population. As you know, we've been having some conversations. Last month, we had a conversation about this. Just wanted to update you on what at least going ons have been notable around the city. Since the last time or last council meeting, I guess two noteworthy things that I will point out. Not that these are the only things going on within the city, but just two that I just wanted to point out. One is we have an individual who is well known to the city staff, that he's around the city, likes to hang out at Great River Landing quite often, is usually gone during the evenings, but was recently came in the middle of the evening. I think he was going to try and stay there and was asked to leave type of a thing. So there was that situation. And then there were some items found around the library. I think there were some sleeping bags along with some other miscellaneous items. Staff or the city is holding those, storing those as required by state statute. So we have those still in our possession. But that was just something that was found recently around the library area. So, but as you recall, at the last council meeting, staff did ask for some feedback from council in regards to some things that you wanted us to kind of move forward with. And one of those items was in looking at an ordinance in regards to city camping on citywide property. We have a current ordinance that does prohibit it in city parks, but we're looking at it on other city property as well. I'm going to turn it over to our legal counsel, Jackson. She was the one that she put together the ordinance, and then a group of us got together. We had some discussions. We talked about things that, would work and that maybe didn't work or we need to tweak. And so the ordinance that's in front of you, or the proposed ordinance, is the result of those meetings and conversations that have been had. So I'll let Amanda add anything more she wants to, but then it's really open for discussion in regards to that ordinance proposed. That proposed ordinance that is before you this evening.
Yeah, so as Rick mentioned, we looked at a couple of different ordinances in the state of Wisconsin as well as outside of the state of Wisconsin, and ultimately settled on what is in front of you today. There's quite a few definitions to start with: camp or camping, and the definition of that, campsite, camping materials, abandoned property, right away, and then what it means to leave or to store. To store or storage. And so this ordinance does prohibit camping upon any city right of way or upon any other city property, except for two exceptions. One is in any public park in which permission has been given under section 801-12A21 of Title 8, which is in the park regulations, where it does give our Director of Park and Recreation the ability to allow camping in a public park. For example, such as maybe a Boy Scout troop wanted to do a camping trip in a local park, or there was an event in which it made sense to allow camping. He does have that authority under that section of the ordinance. And so that would be an exception to this. And then under B2 is by emergency declaration under section 505-14 of the Code of Ordinances. Again, this is a common one in these ordinances. And so I kept it in there because one just can't predict the future. And so maybe there is a natural disaster or something where for whatever reason, we may want to allow some type of camping under an emergency order. And so it does give us the ability for that. This is a little bit interesting and spurred a lot of discussion, but generally speaking, the goal is to encourage compliance through this with a warning. That may not always be the case, and those enforcing this ordinance will assess each situation individually. But unlike some ordinances, we really are trying to educate and simply get compliance. And so in general, it would be the goal simply to, ask people to move on rather than to immediately cite them. And so we do mention that. The last two sections related to abandoned property. I think I mentioned this at the last meeting is, we do sometimes see abandoned property when people are camping on public property. And so there are actually very specific Wisconsin statutes related to how we may dispose of that. And so these basically adopt those statutory provisions and then give us the ability, we're required by statute to auction it unless we give ourselves the ability to dispose of it by other means. And so that's what that last section, that second sentence, end of the sentence is basically we can decide, the best means to dispose of the property. Whether sale, donation, destruction, or any other appropriate disposal in the best interest of the city.
Thank you for that, Amanda. What is the desire of the council regarding the ordinance?
I'll move to approve ordinance 1802-2024.
Second.
We have a motion on the floor by Stephen Knott. It's been seconded by Larry Jurassic. Is there discussion? Is that roll call?
All right.
Larry, Dan Stevens.
So I understand if the police department comes across somebody camping and they're not supposed to, they'll give a warning, please move along. That seems like that's appropriate, but what happens if they either don't comply or if they go away for an hour and then come back? And I mean, it's sometimes these problems don't just leave and never come back, but they become residual and habitual. Is there, well, you mentioned maybe citing, or, I mean, a lot of these unsheltered people aren't going to be able to pay a citation, and are we creating extra work for your department? I don't know. So I guess, are we just hoping that the move along does the job, or?
I mean, unfortunately, I don't think there is a perfect solution to this. And, the chief can feel free to jump in at any time. Citing is not very effective. It is a means, right? So if somebody's refusing to leave or leaves and comes back on a routine basis, citing is an option. If they escalate, obviously the police would address that, whether they're escalating in a way related to mental health issues or they're, just simply resisting an obstruction, those would be handled differently. But there's not a good answer to that question, unfortunately.
Then it's only maybe kind of loosely related. Was there any work done or looking at an ordinance regarding panhandling?
We have looked into panhandling ordinances several times over the last several years. It is very difficult. It is protected under the Constitution. There's limited options we have with respect to that. They know where they're allowed and where they're not allowed, and are often very sort of fluent in the laws related to panhandling. And so while there are a few areas that we could perhaps enforce it greater from a public safety standpoint along the Highway 16 corridor, in general, there's not a lot we can do from an ordinance standpoint as it relates to panhandling.
Okay, Rick Niemeyer would like to say something.
And that was just when Amanda was talking earlier, I just was going to reiterate too, that a lot of these situations that may be encountered are going to be a case specific, that we won't know how any particular thing is going to be handled until, that particular situation is encountered. A lot of thought was given in there too. We have to be careful that there are things that are going to be, people are allowed to use our public property during the day type of a thing. And so these are really just kind of safeguards in the event that there is a situation that specifically camping, or maybe like you were referring to, that might be reoccurring. But again, making sure that we do a lot for people do have the right to use the public property, during certain hours too as well.
Okay, thank you for that. Is there any other discussion? Larry
Would it be
Jurassic.
upgraded to trespassing then, or?
Probably not. I mean, we have park regulations related to hours that people are allowed in parks. It's not a crime to be homeless. And so we're really just sort of looking at, camping in the sense that there has to be more than just, an individual sleeping on a park bench during the day. And so I think trespassing gets a little tricky. Really it would be this violation of public camping, but either way, it goes back to the questions that, Alder Stevens asked, it becomes difficult at times to enforce these types of ordinances.
Okay, thank you, Mayor.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Okay, the motion on the floor is to approve the ordinance. Is that a roll call vote? That's what I thought.
Dan Stevens,
Aye.
Diane Wolf,
Aye.
Mike Milky,
Aye.
Larry Jurassic,
I,
Stephen Knott.
Aye.
That motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Item 15 is closed session. To consider a motion to convene in closed session under section 1985G of the Wisconsin statutes for the purpose of conferring with legal counsel for the governmental body which is rendering oral or written advice concerning strategy to be adopted by the body with respect to litigation in which it is or is likely to become involved, specifically potential enforcement action concerning Camping World Coachman flag and ethics, potential conflicts of interest regarding Camping World. If any action is required in open session as a result of the closed session, the council will reconvene in open session to take the necessary action and or continue on with the printed agenda. Do we have a motion?
Motion to go into closed?
Second.
We have a motion by Alder Diane Wolf. It's been seconded by Alder Mike Milky. The voting will be by roll call.
Larry Jurassic,
I.
Stephen Knott,
Aye.
Dan Stevens,
Aye.
Mike Milky,
Aye.
Diane Wolf.
Aye.
Thank you. We are in closed session. The time is 9:01. We'll just give a few minutes to reset the room and then we'll begin again. Thank you.